The first one, I'm gonna be doing scouts and explaining how to play scouts into different variations, scouts into knights, scouts into archers, scout skirmishes, and how to deal with every single scenario based on that. It's just gonna be a more of an explanation on what to transition into while opening with the build. The build remains pretty much the same as you guys remember. I'm not gonna be changing that much in it. I'm gonna be explaining the whole process throughout. For the first 6 villages, you go to the sheep again. Nothing has changed on that at all. For scouting your resources, there's a guide I made on how to be very efficient with your early scouting and find basically all the resources on the map under 2 minutes. So use that guide if you're struggling finding your resources. For the first few sheeps and the scouts, go in a circle trying to find my initial resources. 6 on sheep, and the next 2 will go to woodline and make a lumber camp there. Instead of going for 3 onward, we're going to be doing 2 onward. And the reason is we're going to be going up 1 population faster than we used to. Since the meta has changed quite a bit, opening scout has become a bit more risky. Civilizations which get a lot of bonuses for going scout should be the ones going scout. Rest of the civilizations struggle quite a bit. Now I just have to find last 2 of my sheeps and find my deers. I'm gonna start immediately pushing the deers as soon as I find them. My recommendation for pushing deer is if you can push all of them, that's good, but at least try to push 2 before you scout your opponent. Once I have 8 on the hunt, 1 villager makes a house next to the berries, and then that villager will make the mill once the wood is 100. So 2 onward, rest on food, and I'm pushing the deer. I'm gonna include all the build orders in a text format below the video. So if you're watching it on YouTube, I'll have that up by the time this video goes up. And to get the second burr, the first burr around 130, 140 food, you should take it. I'm gonna redistribute certain number of villages from the burr to the deer so that I don't run out of food. Of course, the burr has to stop. 1, 2, just make sure it completely follows me. Again, if you are not sure about your scouting abilities, my recommendation is to skip the last deer and just go scout your opponent. And then we're gonna go up with 19 population. Keep your sheep close to the town center. And now we're gonna be trying to find our opponent. Not all the villages are gonna fit under the TC on the burr, so gonna redistribute a little bit to the sheep. And the last villager can go to the berry because there's nothing else I can do over here. Wait until the last second to garrison your villagers. And now I have enough villagers on the food to click up. So at this point, there's a couple of decisions that you can make. If you have a good enough wood line for 1 lumber camp, play 1 lumber camp. But most of the time you would want to have 2 lumber camps so that you have more efficient villager workers. So you should ideally play 2 lumber camps, but in the modern era, you can get away with playing 1 lumber camp. My personal way of assessing when I need second lumber camp is usually if I know if I'm against a scout civilization, the matchup is going to be much more passive because there are going to be spears on the field. So if the spearman defense is an option for you against the scouts of the opponent, playing double lumber camp is totally fine because the game is a little bit slowed in that scenario. But if you're against any sort of militia aggression, any sort of range unit production, pressure, like the opponent goes for straight archers and you need the archery range very quickly, the second lumber camp doesn't pay until 13 minutes. So until that time, 1 lumber camp is actually efficient enough for your villagers to be working at to get enough wood. It's at a certain work time that it becomes inefficient. So it depends on what civ you're up against. If you're up against anything other than scouts, play 1 lumber camp. But if you can kind of confirm by scouting or knowing your opponent or seeing his civilization, let's say you're against Franks and you know he's gonna go scouts, my recommendation in that scenario is just to play double lumber camp and defend both the lumber camps with small walls or spearmen. In this case, if you wanna do this, 5 on each lumber camp should be fine. But if you're planning to play 1 lumber camp, just go for 9 on 1 wood line. I'm gonna do 9 on 1 wood line. Just keep it a little bit different than the last time I showed this. Once the boar has run out, you're gonna send the villagers to the berries so that you have 4 on berries again. And I'm gonna keep 1 lumber camp, 9 on wood line. Instead of your usual 10 on wood, we're gonna be doing 9 on wood. Make the barracks whenever you have the wood. So see, your opponent is going for archers because I scouted the gold. It can also be man-at-arms. So having the option of going for an archery range after making the stable is why we go for the lumber camp with 9 on wood. It takes a while for the second lumber camp to pay off with your villagers. So keeping that in mind, I am playing 1 lumber camp. Make circles around your opponent. Once you're up, drop the stable with 2 villagers. Get the wood upgrade immediately. And the new villagers go to the sheep. Again, another pause I'm making here to explain certain follow-ups that you might see from your opponent. In this scenario, I'm playing against scouts from my opponent. It doesn't matter what the AI is doing, I'm just going over the scenarios. So the most common openings you will see from your opponent are scouts, archers, man-at-arms, and some sort of drush militia aggression. There can be others of forward and all the other stuff, but those are the most common ones that you will find over here. Yeah, so as I was saying, it depends on what the follow-up is gonna look like. After dropping the stable, you might want to drop the farms, you might want to get the horse collar, and you might want to do a certain number of things. So we're gonna go over the same explanation. If you're playing against scouts specifically, get horse collar, start walling up, drop the farms, do not make any other building. But if you're not playing against the scouts, we're gonna be doing other buildings. I'm gonna make a save here. And not save chapter. Save game. Scout Rush 1. So this should save my progress at this particular point after dropping the stable before getting the horse color. This is scenario number 1 where I'm playing against a player who's going scouts himself with 1 lumber camp. Drop the second lumber camp if you have confirmed. In this case, I did not confirm 100% and I do not know what sort of opponent my playstyle is gonna go for. So we're gonna be doing against a scout rush first. In this scenario, I would want to get horse color immediately. The new villagers will keep going to the sheep. I'll get horse color before dropping any farms. Make scouts immediately. Once the stable is up, try to get some walls up. And as soon as you have 60 wood, after the horse color is researched, try to seed as many farms as you can. And the number of farms, this time we're gonna be looking at 14. Ideally, you wanna keep dropping the farms until you're walled. Try to get the villager kills. Once the sheep runs out, every villager goes to the straggler around the town center. And you wanna keep dropping the farms. Make houses as part of the walls. Make spearmen to protect your resources against opponent scout. Run away when the spearman comes. It's not really an issue. I want to protect the gold, so I'm going to be making bigger wall. Usually the initial 3-4 scouts you can go and harass your opponent with these while buying enough time to wall up at your base. So that's exactly what I'm doing over here. I have 12 farms. I'm gonna be adding 2 more. I have 14 farms now, and I have 6 scouts. I will stop scout production at this particular point because I would want to transition into Castle Age. Keep adding scouts and get upgrades if you feel like instead of dropping the mining camp, what the next step could be is to drop the blacksmith and get upgrades on your scouts. If your opponent is still open, if your opponent is playing open, you can get attack upgrade. If you're against melee units, you can get armor. If you're against range units, you don't have to go to Castle Age. You can keep making scouts and keep attacking. You're gonna be skipping everything else. And now I want the gold. Drop the blacksmith when you have the word for it. Once you have 8 in gold, new villages will keep making farms until you have enough food to click up. You can make these farms near the mill if your mill is kind of secured. If not, Then just keep dropping these farms. I can click up. So important distinction and time to make another decision over here. The most common scout versus scout scenario, people have started playing light cavalry and monks. So that's the meta right now. So the transition for that looks a little bit different. After having initial 8 in gold, you can remove a couple of these villages and add farms and get the second lumber camp up while you're going up. And also even add extra scouts. The next step is to get the attack upgrade. Oh man, that villager survived so much. Good bloodlines. Don't get the gold upgrade because we're gonna be only keeping 5 on gold, and no need to add the second stable. Start farms instead. And while you're going up, keep adding scouts. So this is gonna be more of a macro approach while playing Lightcav. This is the same thing that people have been doing on Arena, and this was translated into the Arabia meta. If the walls are up and you're playing against someone playing double stable knights, all you have to do is make monks to stop that. So this is the reason we are playing it like this. Again, I'm going over the scenario where we are playing against someone going for scouts. Once you're up, get the wood upgrade, get the Lightcav upgrade, and keep making Lightcav. Drop the monastery when you can. And that's pretty much it in terms of the opening. Now we also want to get the wheelbarrow. Keep adding light cavalry because light cavalry is a unit you want to make at this stage of the game to kill your opponent's monks, which is a very common thing to be making in a night war. Pick up relics and deny your opponent from doing much. And once your monastery is up, that's when you add the third town center. If your opponent is playing knights at any point, camels or whatever, the monks should be able to hold that pretty easily. And if you're feeling uncertain about your monk micro capabilities, just add another monastery. Just go for double the monks. Most of the time, if you're playing at a higher level, people are going to be mirroring what is happening in this scenario. Like they're gonna be playing Lightcav themselves, so you wanna get husbandry, bloodlines, and +1 attack. You don't need armor as much because you're not gonna be really diving their town centers or anything. But if you feel like you have the opportunity to do it, get +1 on that as well. Now we're just macroing while playing Lightcav. it's pretty much the same as Arena. But in this scenario, you're making light cavalry until you want to transition out of it. So you made monks, you made 3 TC, you made light cav. Now once you make enough monks, you'll start banking a little bit of gold. In this case, I'm playing Saracen, so making market is usually the next step with every civilization. But with Saracen, it's just like a little bit more of a bonus. So once you have your 3 TCs, your initial setup complete, around 25 to 30 farms, this is your next transition timing. Either you want to go up to Imperial Age, or you're going to be making a lot of army at this stage of the game. So the next transition can be something like making a lot of knights, transitioning out of your light cavalry into maybe a unique unit which your civilization is specifically like good at doing, and getting like defensive castles up or something. If you're getting pushed, you can add a defensive siege workshop and adapt and respond based on what is happening in the game. And around 65 to 70 villages, you should also get hand card. Oh boy. Yes, committing. Now, in this scenario, like you can just go Imperial, you can make like add stables, add a lot of knights, and do like a multiple number of things and respond to whatever your opponent is making. But the faster uptime, the transition timings, like scouts into transition is a little bit different than in a scout war. This scenario is like a scout war into light cav into a transition. I'm Saracens, I can play camels if my opponent is making a lot of knights, but if my opponent is making knights plus pikes, I might need to transition into maybe cavalry archers or get a defensive castle up, like chemistry, get hand cannons. So the game can go into multiple directions, but at this point I would end the build order because it's going to be very subjective on what is happening in the game. You can add a 4th town center to continue even booming harder, add more farms, add multiple reduction buildings. So you can play aggressive, defensive, you can try to take the map by dropping a castle in the middle. But this is where the initial build of the scouts into light cav ends on Arabia. Hopefully the explanation of why we're playing light cav makes sense, and why in the modern meta the efficiency of monks is going to be changing the meta for this way. You add the monastery and a 2nd town center instead of going for 3 town centers immediately. So the next transition is going to be of skirmishes. I see my opponent is going to gold, and I'm going to be making a skirmisher transition. And what happens in that scenario is after getting the lumber camp upgrade, they're actually going to skip the horse color. And every new village just goes to sheep. You still make scouts. You still make the scouts, but you do not make any farms until you have enough wood for an archery range, and you drop the archery range almost immediately. This is a little bit different from the last time because of how fast you need the transition and the amount of resources you actually need to pull this off. So we cannot waste any excess resource defending this. And once you have your 4 scouts, they're gonna start making skirmishes. New villages go to straggler, and you make skirmishes whenever you can afford it. This way you can actually apply pressure even with the skirmishes if your opponent is being passive. The most important thing when playing skirmisher is to remember that your opponent has his initial scout alive. If that initial scout is alive, you cannot send the skirmishes one by one like this. You have to accompany them with the scouts. So make sure there's not a random scout trying to pick off the skirmishes in the middle of the map. And once I have 4 farms, I'm gonna be dropping the blacksmith so that I can research fletching or the armor for the skirmishes, but most of the time it's just gonna be fletching. Try to apply pressure. Just keep dropping farms. Skipping horse collar just so that we can make a lot of units. The theory behind skipping horse collar and making skirmisher immediately is the value we get out of making skirmishers this quickly. The skirmishers will counter the archers or any sort of militia that your opponent is gonna throw at you, and it actually equalizes the amount of damage they can do by using skirmishers as a defensive unit in this scenario. Again, you can skip the skirmisher production a little bit to get the fletching, which is exactly what I'm doing. It just depends on how quickly you need it. And this time, I'm gonna be doing at least 16 farms before I go to gold. But the amount of farms will also depend on the amount of skirmishes you're making. You can kickstart the scout production again if you feel like the skirmishes are not giving you any more value. So you can keep making scouts because we're starting to bank food once the farm numbers go up. Now we have 16 farms. We can start making villagers to gold now. Remove some of the wood villagers which went from straggler to the wood line. I'm going for like a conservative end skirmisher before I stop it. Now we're just gonna be doing villages on gold until you can collect off. Okay, wait on gold. New villages can actually go to wood. Refresh this lumber camp and make a new one. The most technical thing about this one is just the timing of the skirmishers. If you can mask them very quickly, you'll most of the time take almost no damage. And we are able to click up after opening scouts, get armor on the way up to the next stage. And depending on your civilization, there can be different things to worry about. You can play skirmisher monks You can play skirmishers into cavalry archers. You can play skirmisher camel. Or there can be other different transitions that can happen in this scenario. If you're against crossbows and knights, my recommendation is to go for skirmisher monks and try to push away the knights from attacking you. Once you're up, get horse color, and depending on how many you need on gold. So since I'm gonna be making skirmishers and monks, again I'm gonna remove these 3 villages from gold and put them to wood again. While going up, gonna be replacing my farms, 16 farms. If you're against range units, you just get upgrades on your skirmishes. The biggest issue I think the new players generally have is when to cut off the skirmisher production. I would say something around 10 is usually fine. If you have 10 skirmishers and you're not playing a elongated skirmisher war, you can start stopping them. Once you're up, I'm also even gonna get the wheelbarrow upgrade, drop the monastery immediately. Bodkin, elite skirmisher, wood upgrade, and wheelbarrow. Those are the upgrades I'm going for. And again, I'm gonna be dropping a town center as well. You usually do not want to get ballistics when you're playing skirmishes early on. It's not like you're gonna be killing any villagers. You cannot raid with them unless your opponent is kind of open and only has access to range units. Sometimes you can finish the game by rushing in with these units. Getting the second armor is pretty useful against a lot of crossbows. You can like close the distance and get right next to them and kill them. Like the towers or town center fire is also not an issue for elite skirmishers once you have 6 armor on them. With these rest of the scouts, I'm gonna be looking for relics, and again we're gonna be adding farms instead of adding the 3rd town centers a little bit. With the excess food, you can mix in camels if you're afraid of any knights, or your opponent might even make siege himself like mangonels. So instead of camels, you go for your own knights. So the game can go from this position into multiple variations. You can start adding the TC again and start to boom your economy. Add skirmishers if you lose your numbers, but once you get your initial upgrades, you almost never want to keep making skirmishers unless you lose your initial ball. Like if you don't have around 10 skirmishers, keep making it, but anything above 10 skirmisher is overkill in my opinion. You can use those resources into booming instead. And that pretty much ends the build order again. Get the farm upgrade, get the gold upgrade if you're having more than 8 on gold. And boom up your economy and transition to whatever unit you're gonna be making. It depends very heavily on which civilization you're playing against, on what the transition is gonna look like. Which is gonna be scouts into archers. Not as common, but it is still very hard to stop in the modern variation if your opponent doesn't expect it. Again, we're gonna be making scouts, spearmen, assuming Your opponent is also making scouts. But this time we're gonna be dropping 2 farms just so that we can sustain a little bit of, I forgot the house, my bad. Just so that we can sustain villager production. And that's it. We are gonna be skipping horse color again. We do not need it. But we are substituting those for extra spearmen. And as soon as your sheeps run out, we're gonna be sending 4 villagers to the gold mine. Drop the archery range. And that's pretty much it. These 4 villages will allow you to make archers. And we're not gonna be transitioning into double ranges. We're just gonna be using our initial scouts and spearmen and use the archer transition to kill your opponent's spearmen. Get blacksmith immediately as well, because without fletching the archers are very underwhelming, especially we are sacrificing the numbers this time around for the fast transition to pay off. It's very important if you're playing against scouts that you keep your scout and spear numbers alive. Just poke a little bit your opponent, but do not engage him directly. And we're gonna be doing again the 16 farm count. As soon as you have the food for it, get fletching. Mostly these are just gonna stay on stragglers again. But since we are not making any food unit, the food income should be good enough to sustain this. Now you just send villagers to gold until you have enough gold to click up. The archers should be producing the entire time. And with the 4 on berries and 16 farms, the food count should be climbing up very quickly. Yeah, fuck it. I don't need that house. After I have around 9 on gold, you can stop. And the reason we do 9 on gold is just so that you can have a little bit of extra gold income while you're going up, so you can afford the upgrades. 8 on gold is enough for double range, which is exactly what I'm gonna do. Add a second range. Get the armor for your archers if you're against range units. Add the second range while going up. Get the gold mining upgrade, horse collar. Refresh any farmers you can. You're gonna be needing that food. You're gonna run out of you're gonna pretty much run out of wood, but that's fine depending on what is happening. In a real game, would I add a tower on the gold mine? Probably, if I'm being defensive with my units. Like, I don't really want to fight this army before I get my castle age upgrades. Like, do not engage your opponent's army when you're this close up to the next stage. Once the berries run out, just go for these villages on wood line again. I should have actually refreshed this lumber camp, which I'm gonna do now. Get the wood upgrade, the Bodkin arrow, and the crossbow, and the new villages basically go to wood line again. If you have any stragglers remaining or whatever. Now basically do not reseed any farms once you're up. Also the usual upgrade of getting wheelbarrow once you're in castle age. And now we have crossbows after transitioning from scouts into archers. Add town centers or add university if you feel like you need it. My recommendation of when to get ballistics and when not to get it is, if you're against crossbows of your opponent, get it. But if you're up against anything else, you actually don't need it. It's better to just add TC instead. You can add the university after the second TC, but if you want to skip the second TC and get ballistics, make sure you're only doing it when you're against your opponent's crossbows. Doing it for any other reason than that, you almost never get enough value. Like making ballistics against elite skirmishes or something doesn't really make any sense. Even knights, like he's not really gonna fight you while running away. So the ballistic upgrade is mostly useful when you're playing against your opponent's crossbows. Now we're gonna be doing crossbows again, and again it just depends if you want a third TC before ballistics or do you want a third TC. You also don't need to absolutely go for third TC or ballistics. What the next transition could be is a siege workshop. Let's say your opponent is playing elite skirmishes, so instead of going for a third town center, I'm gonna make a siege workshop instead. Now get the farm upgrade as well. I'm floating a little bit of gold, but again, that's almost a non-issue because after you make your third TC, you should always make a market. So floating gold in the mid game is not as bad as floating any of the other resources. Like floating wood and food is much worse than floating gold because you can make a market and buy the rest of the resources. Again, I'm just saving enough wood for the third town center. And once I have it, I'm gonna make a market so that I can like maybe buy some food, maybe buy some stone or whatever. It just depends on what is happening in the game. Even a monastery, so like the third building can be either a siege workshop, it can be a monastery if you're against knights, it can be, so the most of the time the three buildings you should be focusing are university, siege workshop, or a monastery. University against opponent's crossbow, siege workshop against opponent's skirmishers, and monastery against opponent's knights when you're playing archers in the mid game. You should almost always make monks instead of going for pikemen. You do not have the food economy for transitioning into pikemen. That's why you do not do it. And at this point, you can buy food and wood to balance out your economy. Start transitioning into stone so that you can drop a castle. And this remains basically the same as what will happen in Imperial. Like I'm gonna try to get up to Imperial by dropping your 30 to 35 farms. The next transition is just gonna be that. I'm gonna be spending all my wood into making farms until I have 30 to 35 farms. Monastery against knights, university against crossbows, but at this point I have too many crossbows, so if my 3TC boom is almost completed, I can start transitioning into that. Ballistic upgrade. Add more to gold. And if you want to transition into like a totally different unit, if you don't want to play crossbows when you reach Imperial, let's say you want to transition into Paladin, Camel or whatever, add a 4th town center instead of trying to go up to Imperial Age. Cut production of the first unit and start making the second unit. I'm just gonna be selling the rest of my resources until I can click up. Now I should have enough. While going up, I also want to get handcart. And now I should have enough stone for castle, which I'm gonna drop in the middle of the map, kinda on a hill, just protecting the base and stuff. And at this point, you can get your upgrades when you reach Imperial, make siege, start walling up the map, and transition into whatever secondary unit you want to make. So this is like your scouts into archer transition into crossbow and the follow-ups from that. Straight archers. Are you watching new improved builds? Yes. This one is gonna be straight archers. It's like a little bit different than the old one. The reason you want to do it is mostly to counter the militia openings that your opponents are making. If your civilization is good at doing it, having like archers and opening archers like Britons, Ethiopians, Mayans, Portuguese, etc., you should consider opening with this build. And the reasoning is you're up really quickly and you take almost no damage to any sort of aggression that your opponent is doing. There can be multiple things that you might play against when opening archers, like scouts and stuff. Your opponent sees that you're planning to go for an archer build and decides to go for scouts into skirmishes. So how to deal with scouts into skirmishes while opening straight archers, that's also something I'll go over. I'll make the save when I reach feudal age, and then I'll go over all the transitions that you guys might run into. The same thing will happen. We're gonna be doing 2 onward. In this one, you don't need to scout your opponent as heavily. We should almost always just push all the deers because we need the extra food in this build. And once you have like around 13 on food under the town center, the last 2 villages will go to gold and make the mining camp over there. We're gonna be using mining camp as our second building to click up. Once you've pushed all the deer, you can go scout your opponent. And again, we're gonna be just playing 1 lumber camp. No need for the second one. And 9 on wood again. All the build orders I'm doing are gonna be suited for 1v1 only. The team game builds are pretty much the same as last time I showed them. Last time I did the build orders, they were more suited for team games. These ones are mostly for 1v1s. Once you have the resources to make the barracks, make the barracks. If you're afraid of any sort of militia aggression, you can start walling your resources. Take stragglers. If you are not sure you will have enough resources for your artillery range. I'm not walling it completely because sometimes the position of the map is not as suited, so you can still get away with these walls. Once you're up, drop the artillery range, get the wood upgrade, and put all the stragglers back onto food if you are taking stragglers. now you see we have militias over here, and most of our resources have been walled in, so the militias won't really do any damage. Once you start making the archer, you should also make a spearman. A spearman is a very good tool in the early feudal age to push away the scout. The scout is usually the damage dealer whenever the militias are there. Since the militias cannot catch villagers, the scout is there to block it. So if you can nullify the scout with the spearman, the archers should be able to get the kills that your opponent needs for his militia aggression to pay off. Once you have 6 on sheep, every new villager goes to the berry. And we're going to be doing 5 on berries before we make any other unit. These 2 on gold will let you make initial archers. And now I'll make a pause on and make a save. Archer rush. Save. So this is the initial setup on what will happen. Nothing will change from this position. Like, everything should remain the same in terms of build order till this point of the game. You make your archers, you make your spearmen. You're always making the spearmen, you're always making the archers, and you're gonna be following the build order till you have 5-1 berry exactly the same. The next transition might be dependent on what is happening in the game. You can remove these villages from gold if you're gonna be transitioning out of the archers. Next step can be maybe making your skirmishers, dropping a blacksmith, or dropping a stable. Stable when you know your opponent is going for skirmishers, blacksmith when you know your opponent is going for archers, and mixing your own skirmisher is mostly for civilization which get skirmisher bonuses, like Lithuanian, Dravidian. In this case, I am playing Byzantine, so I'm not going to be showing that since we get a skirmisher discount. But if you're playing a civilization which has some bonuses of skirmishers, my recommendation is to gather 50 gold out of these 2 villages, remove them, and start making farms. I'm going to be showing the fast fletching transition instead of the stable. We are assuming your opponent is going archers after opening militia. Once you have 3 archers, you can actually move out. I'm getting housed a little bit, but that's again a common theme with me. And I'm gonna be waiting for 3 farms before I send villagers to gold again. So in total we have 5 on the berries and 3 farms, and rest on the sheep. Get fletching whenever you can afford it. And we're gonna be going for 5 on gold and continuously make farms whenever you have the 60 gold. So there's a couple of things that can happen from this position again. Again, your opponent will start making maybe skirmishers, so you can drop a stable to push those skirmishers away after you get fletching. But if you want to do it really quickly, instead of going for the blacksmith, you just drop the stable. Once I have the 5 on gold, we're gonna be going 8 on farms, and this is gonna be a little bit different. So if your walls are up and you know your opponent is kind of playing passive, the next step is actually to make a market. The new villages after you have 8 on farms will all go to gold. Continue making arches the entire time. If you are not sure about what your opponent is gonna do, but if you know, like your opponent is sitting in his base and not really moving out, you can just cut the archer production as well. So I'm not gonna be making any archers after this one. Sell everything, buy food. And we are getting ready to click up to Castle Age. Our economy is very fragile. So you have to make sure you don't take any damage. Do the market up only when you're certain that you're not gonna be taking any damage, because you might need a tower or some other building. And once you have clicked up, start making archers again. The next building can be dependent on what your civilization, what your opponent's civilization is. You can drop a second range if you want to keep making crossbows. You can drop a stable in case your opponent has too many skirmishes. So in this case, I'm going to drop a stable, or your opponent is playing, like, let's say knights, so you can drop a stable with the civilization like Byzantines. Like, I played Byzantines so that I don't have any bonuses in the early game to show what sort of scenario is gonna happen. Now we are dropping a stable, and I'm gonna be making camels, so getting plate barding armor. I should have enough resources even with this initial setup to afford bodkin arrow and crossbow. Gonna be refreshing that lumber camp. Crossbow, bodkin, a couple of camels. You probably can't afford the wood upgrade if you use the market this quickly, and also not able to afford town centers. Most of the time when you're going up this quickly, your target is to do some damage so that the faster uptime is worth it. Your opponent's economy by default becomes better than yours if you use the market, because we are trading resources at a worse rate to get up to Castle Age much faster. So you have to make sure you do some damage. Getting the wood upgrade when I can afford it. Also, I'm gonna get the farm upgrade before I drop these farms. Again, like, just try to do as much damage with the crossbow timing and the market abuse. And behind that, you can develop your economy again. If you feel like you've done enough damage, you can start buying resources back to continue to boom. In this case, I'm gonna add a second TC, because if this army did enough damage with a faster uptime, I can continue booming behind this so that I don't fall too far behind in economy against someone who is continuing to boom at the same time. Can also afford wheelbarrow. Around 40, 41, 42 villages, you should be trying to get wheelbarrow. fresh farms because you need to be able to produce villages. And yeah, this pretty much becomes the same if you have the same, like, transition can be dependent on whatever your opponent is doing. Like, my next play would probably be adding a monastery, picking up relics, converting whatever your opponent is throwing at you, healing up my units, raid a little bit, poke, and go back, start booming, transition for 3 town centers, and try to get up to Imperial Age after that. This is basically the same thing. It's just the opening is what I am showing. So the fast archers and the transition into the same scenario as the archers. We have 5-1 berries, and this time instead of going for the blacksmith, we're gonna be going for scouts. Make a house before I forget. Again, do not get the horse color. The wood upgrade is the only thing you need. Make farms whenever you can afford them. And this will be a little bit tough on your economy. The decision time in this position is, do you want to get the scouts out or do you want to get the villages out? So if your opponent is going for a very fast skirmisher transition, I would be saying, like, try to prioritize scouts over villages. But of course, once your farms kick in, you should be able to produce both. Your archer production will also be stopped a little bit because you only have 2 on gold. You only remove these 2 villages on gold if you're going for the skirmisher transition, which I'm not going to be showing. I'm only going to be showing the scout transition. And in the scout transition, the farm number is again important. We're going to be going for 14 farms before we transition back to gold. Just try to produce military as much as you can all the time. Once you have around 10 farms, you will start having enough archers for it being worth to get the upgrades. So 10 farm is what you need. 14 is in total for the number of farms before you transition. For gold, I have 10 farms. Get the blacksmith. I'm gonna be waiting for the wood for 14 farms before we go to gold again. Keep making scouts. Like, the number of scouts you need will again just it literally depends on what the opponent is doing and how passive or aggressive your opponent is playing. 14 farms, and now all the stragglers will just go to gold, get the fletching. And at this point of the game, if the situation has stabilized, we're going to be doing the same trick of using the market to click up so that we don't fall behind in the uptime. Just like use your initial army to buy as much time while your walls are helping you to protect your base. New villages after this all go to gold. Again, I could go up faster than this if I reduce the number of scouts. I would have clicked up already if I don't make the last 2 scouts. After this villager, I should have enough resources. Now I'm up. And at this point, continue archers again or add scouts again. It just literally depends on what the opponent is doing. And we're getting up to 20-ish castle age timing again. Gonna be refreshing my lumber camp. Oh, what did I delete? I clicked delete. I guess it didn't count. I thought I deleted a villager. But archers again, scouts. You can get the upgrades for your cavalry while going up. Make knights if you need knights. Let's say you lost all the archers, then of course we're gonna be not making archers. You're gonna drop a second stable and you're gonna be playing maybe Lightcav, maybe knights, maybe camels. It just depends on what the game is looking like and how much army your opponent is making. To do that, you have to scout and see. I am making it against the AI and I'm just explaining factors, but the most important part of these transition is to scout your opponent. Even if your opponent is fully walled, just try to click their towers, their town centers or whatever. I see their tower, I see +1 attack, +1 range. That means he's playing range units. I see some buildings. Let's say he has a stable over here instead of the blacksmith. That means he wants to play cavalry. So that will give me the clues I need on what do I need to do next. I might just buy the stone back so that I can get the town center, make camels, play a camel war against Hindustani, get the wood upgrade. The attack, get the husbandry upgrade. Again, you have the market. Excess gold is almost a non-issue because you can buy any resources you feel you need. I'm gonna get the farm upgrade. I'm just gonna keep buying food to boom. And once you have your second town center, I can drop a monastery. Like he's playing crossbow and spearman as Hindustani, which is super weird, but it's the AI, so it doesn't matter. So you can even drop a siege workshop right now instead of any of the other buildings. It just depends on what you see from your opponent. I can make a couple of scorpions to counter his entire army. So knowing what units we are playing will depend on what is happening in the game. And that pretty much ends the archers and its transitions. The first one we're gonna be going over, like in the current meta, the 3 most common militia openings are Premill Drush, French Drush, and Manor Towns. Those are the only 3 openings which are viable in the current meta. So we're gonna be starting off with your classic Premill Drush, the one which is the oldest amongst these, and going to the Manor Town, and then we're gonna be finishing it off with French Drush. All of the openings have different openers. I cannot make a save and make a transition. So I'm gonna be doing the Premill Drush first after you find your initial resources. My recommendation when going for the Premill Drush, it's gonna be the fastest one out of these. So go for 2 deer pushes because scouting for your opponent is a necessity in this one. If again you're not confident in your scouting abilities, just push one deer. Finding your opponent is much more important than pushing in the deer when you are going for any sort of militia aggression. Again, if you're greedy enough as well, so you can get away with pushing all the deers as well. It depends on your playstyle most of the time. So for the openings, we have 6 on food, 4 on word. The next villager takes the hunt. And the villager after that makes 2 houses before you will have enough wood for the barracks. You can make it after the 1 house, but most of the time you won't have enough food to continuously make it. So my reasoning for this is just go for the 2nd house, because why not? The saving of extra 20 seconds is not gonna be worth it, because you're not gonna be able to afford the militia in that short period of time anyway. And now we have enough resources for the barracks. Every new villager goes to the food. Get your hunt. Most of the food is in the hands of the villagers. So after this house, we can make a mill. And we are only making 2 militia. We're not mining the gold for the 3rd militia anymore. In this modern variation of the drush, like the theory behind that is you can do the same amount of damage you do with the classic drush. And of course we're skipping the mill as well before we get the barracks, since our villages are efficient enough under the town center to get you the food you need.
Impero. Porro. Impero. Tremita. Impero.
Try to harass the villagers. If we can get the kills, it's pretty good, but most of the time the drush is there to buy time. Once you're up, send 5 villagers to a different lumber camp and 1 of the villager to the same wood line. We have 4 on berries, 5 on each wood line. Now depends on what your follow-up is gonna be. Most of the time the follow-up should be archers. So you send 3 villagers to gold. And remaining villagers stay under the town center. If you did not push any deer and you're running out of food under the town center, just add like 1 or 2 farms instead of sending them to berries or something. It's better to invest into farms and have a continuous source of food than to idle your town center and idle these villages. If you can keep your scout alive, it's pretty good. So you're reaching at 10 minutes to the castle feudal age. Drop the archery range, get the wood upgrade immediately, and again we're skipping the horse collar
Presto. Pugno.
Skipping the horse collar because you don't really need it.
Caedo, condo. Salve,
Try to get your walls up if you're against scouts.
Ain, condo. Impero. Condo.
I'll just wall to the edge because why not?
Salve.
Sane.
More arches. Start making farms. There's a rare that we can open now, I think. Yeah, I think the Militia, French Drush, and Manatom is like more popular right now. That's why going for the Premill Drush can still work and catch people if they don't expect it. Like it's still like a really decent opening.
Ain, condo.
Most of the time if you're against scouts you want to get your walls up.
Presto. Ain, condo.
It just depends on what you see from your opponent. You can
Presto.
try to get yourself fully walled
Impero.
before any of the scouts can come.
Salve. Ain, caedo. Ain.
Impero. Sane. Ain. Presto.
Presto, condo. Sane. Salve. Condo.
Get fletching if you're planning to move out and attack or whatever, but if you're planning to not attack your opponent and just camp behind your walls, it's better to skip it. If you're getting fletching, just wait for 10 farms. And once you have 10 farms, again the same thing is gonna happen which is happening when you play archers. We're gonna be using the market. It's just like a thing that has evolved since going up to Castle Edge is very necessary. Cut archer production if you feel like the archers are not really getting you any value and you're better off just saving the gold to click up faster.
Salve. Colo. Presto. Colo.
Sell all the stone, buy the food, sell all the wood, buy the food, and now we can click up. And now you can start making archers again. So at this point, the decision making will happen again. What is your opponent doing? What civilization does he have? Based on that, we'll make our transition. We'll add a stable for camels or knights. If your opponent is going skirmishes, you can add a second range, go for crossbows. Or you can start booming or add a monastery. It just totally depends on what is happening in the game. You like to have 7 archers alive before cutting versus scouts into knights? Yeah, something like that. Seems correct enough. Gold upgrade, farm upgrade is going up.
Salve. Condo. Caedo. Impero.
In this scenario, let's say we want to make crossbows still.
Condo. Colo.
Sane, commita. Ago. Sane, ago. Sane. Ein.
Against knights, you want camels or monks and stuff, so instead of the second archery range, just stay with one.
Ein. Pugno. Ago. Sane. Pugno.
Drop the second archery range if you're against your opponent's crossbows. Like, we're assuming our opponent is playing crossbow in this scenario.
Ein. Impero.
Once you're up, your 3 usual upgrades.
Presto.
Ein. Presto. Impero.
Caedo.
Ein. Impero. Presto. Impero. Sane. Presto.
Ein.
And since we're playing against crossbows,
Ein.
also get ballistics. For that, we need to drop the university.
Ein.
Odio.
Ein. Impero. Presto. Porro. Sane. Commita. Ein. Ein. Presto. Ago.
Presto.
Do not reseed any farms and do not make arches after dropping the university,
Ago.
because we want to save the wood for getting ballistics.
Presto. Ein. Ein. Pugno. Ago. Commita. Sane. Porro. Impero. Ein. Commita. Ago. Porro. Impero. Ein. Sane. Ago. Sane. Ein.
Once you get ballistics, you can start producing crossbows again.
Presto. Commita. Pugno.
Ein. Caedo. Caedo.
Presto. Ein. Sane. Presto.
And from this position, it just depends. Let's say we wanna continue booming. I'm gonna buy the stone back
Impero.
and save up the wood for another town center.
Presto.
Ein.
Condo.
Commita.
Ein.
Sane.
Pugno. Impero.
Sane.
And now we're gonna start making farms again.
Ein. Ein. Commita. Presto. Ein. Sane. Impero.
Ein. Caedo. Salve. Colo.
Presto. Porro. Ein. Ago. Impero. Sane. Presto. Ein. Impero. Sane. Ein. Ago.
Wheelbarrow around 40-41 villages.
Caedo.
Presto. Condo.
Ein.
Presto. Ein.
I just wanna keep buying food and wood to make sure my town centers are running
Pero. Condo.
Ein. Pugno. Impero. Ein. Porro.
while continuously making archers.
Condo.
Impero. Sane. Pugno. Ein. Presto. Ein. Ago.
Salve.
Ein. Sane. Ein. Pugno. Sane.
Presto. Condo. Salve. Condo. Ein.
Impero. Ein. Commita. Presto. Pugno.
Impero. Condo. Presto.
Impero. Ago.
It depends on what your opponent is doing. This opening doesn't work if your opponent is going knights. I would not have made the second archery range, and I would have made camels and monks and stuff instead if I know that my opponent is playing
Ein.
something else. I made only crossbows and I'm playing like this, assuming that my opponent is
Porro. Ein. Commita.
assuming I don't have
Ago.
Presto. Condo. Ein.
Ein.
what do you call it,
Impero.
units. Also skip market versus knights.
Porro. Ein.
No, you still make the market against knights because you want the faster uptime.
Pero. Condo. Salve.
Condo. Condo. Condo.
Presto. Ein. Porro. Ein.
You
Sane.
almost never do bikes.
Salve.
Impero.
Impero.
It's too expensive and is like most of the time not worth it. You only make bikes against like an all-in knight push from your opponent,
Condo.
Impero. Ein.
and you can recognize the all-in knight push
Porro.
is when you see like triple stable full upgrades on this.
Impero. Ago. Ein. Impero.
You add a TC, and again we're gonna go up with 30 farms, drop the siege workshop, drop the stables, the transition build. The classic Manhattan opening was 22 bob, then we shaved it down to 21, and now With a no bonus civilization, you can do a 20 population maritime rush. If your scouting is good enough, push all the deers. But for this one, you basically need minimum of 2. Again,
Presto. Ein. Fabulo.
6 on sheep.
Salve. Fabulo.
Then we're gonna be doing 3 onward instead of 4.
Ein. Condo.
Presto. Fabulo. Pero. Fabulo. Ein. Fabulo.
So 3 onward. Get your burst.
Caedo.
Presto. Fabulo. Ein. Corretto. Salve. Pero.
Ah,
Ein.
messed up.
Presto. Ein. Ein. Beato. Salve. Corretto. Condo.
Still fine though.
Ein. Salve. Ein.
Salve. Venato. Presto.
Fabulo.
Venato.
Presto.
Pero. Venato. Salve. Ein. Venato. Salve. Presto. Pero. Presto. Venato. Pero. Ein.
You push to your second deer. You can push the last one if you are sure you can find your opponent, and
Salve.
it won't take you too much time.
Ein.
But I'm gonna skip it so that
Salve.
it can be as conservative as it can with the build.
Corretto.
Salve.
Presto. Cane. Salve. Corretto. Ein. Ein. Salve. Impero. Condo.
We're gonna be going up for 20 population. We are actually skipping the mill even when going mana towns.
Presto. Condo. Condo.
Pero. Salve. Pero. Ein.
Fabulo.
Every villager basically goes to food until the last one. The last one goes to gold.
Fabulo.
We're using the barracks as our building to click up.
Ein.
Presto. Fabulo. Salve. Corretto.
Once you click up,
Impero. Fabulo.
Pero. Fabulo. Ein. Fabulo.
send a second villager to gold.
Salve. Corretto.
And now we're going to be redistributing our villages to woodline and berries.
Ein. Ein.
We need 8 on this woodline, 1 lumber camp,
Fabulo.
and we're going to be waiting for the wood to kick in before we send villages to berries.
Pero.
You can send 3 villages to berries
Salve.
Salve.
so that you have 6 on sheep.
Presto. Correctus. Fabulo. Fabulo.
Presto.
Like by the time they're almost done collecting, you'll have enough
Impero.
food
Salve. Condo.
and should move out of your barracks whenever you have the third militia.
Fabulo.
Caedo.
Ein, sale, ago. Presto, commita.
Presto. Salve.
The last sheep is almost done.
Fabulo.
Gonna send one of the villagers to the berries.
Ein,
Impero. Caedo. Caedo.
pero,
Salve.
Get the word upgrade, get the manatom upgrade, and drop the archery range immediately.
Fabulo.
pero, presto. Ein, sale, ein,
Pero.
Caedo.
ein, ago.
Presto.
Cane.
Pero,
The new villagers will go to berries until you have 6 on berries.
ein, pero,
Attack the villagers or whatever you can find
Condo. Pero.
and start making farms immediately. You're not gonna be able to afford the word upgrade if your civilization doesn't have any bonuses of food or anything, and that's fine. We are going to skip the word upgrade for a while. It's pretty important to get it because it pays off very quickly, but since we did not get the last year, it's gonna be a while before you can afford it. It's better to almost always continue making villages.
Caedo. Impero.
Have 6 on berries, and that's enough. Start making spearmen if you're against scouts. So, like, that's also one of the reasons you cannot afford the word upgrade, because sometimes you need spearmen to protect your resources. So, if you're against scouts and you want to send a spearman forward, you just have to make it instead of getting the word upgrade. All the new villages, after you have 6 on berries, you want 4 farms before you start sending to gold again. This will allow you to have 10 on food.
presto, pugno.
Keep attacking villages if you want to get value. Do not fight a big cluster of villages. It's better to save the militias in that scenario
Condo. Caedo.
and the manatowns. Wait for the spearmen to come, and that's when you can start engaging again, because spearmen makes it very difficult for your opponent to use his scouts to clean the manatowns.
Sale, ein,
And once you get like even a 1 villager or 2 villager, my recommendation is to start going back towards the archery range to accompany the manatowns and do another round of damage. So do a little bit of harassment on one of the resources, and when he has barely enough army to kill your army, just start going back. He will be forced to engage with a worse army into your manatowns.
presto, ago.
In this case, he has archers, so it doesn't really matter. But if we were playing against scouts specifically, it will look a little bit differently. A lone unit like this, you can just pick it off with your scout.
Ein,
I'm gonna get fletching even over the word upgrade. If you're playing aggressive and open, that's my recommendation.
Foglio. Caedo.
Presto.
And again, we're just gonna be
Odio. Caedo.
using our villages on straggler and woodline to drop farms continuously until you can make archers comfortably. And now I can afford the word upgrade at the same time. So it takes a while for you to get the word upgrade, but you can afford it depending on how aggressive and passive you're playing and the amount of damage you're getting. If you're doing a lot of damage with the army, just skip the word upgrade and keep doing damage. But if your opponent is walled, he's playing passive, you can't really do a lot of damage, try to get your economy upgrades instead.
pugno.
Salve. Ein. Caedo. Salve. Presto. Salve. Fondo.
Ein, ago. Pero, ein, sale.
And since my map is open, again, we're gonna be doing the same food count thing. We're gonna go for 10 farms, and after that we'll decide on what building do I want to make. Do I want to make a market to go up faster? Do I want to drop a stable to maybe counter your opponent's skirmishes? It just depends on what is happening in the game. on what is the next transition gonna look like. So 10 farms and everything after that goes to gold if you're going for the market route.
Vero. Presto. Ein porro.
You can keep making archers, or you can even cut production of the archers depending on how much value you're getting out of your units.
Presto. Ein ago. Presto. Sane. Porro.
Presto. Ein.
Quando?
Ein. Presto.
So even after opening the archers, you can go up to castle age very quickly behind it.
Presto. Vero.
Almost all of the modern builds require you to make a market after opening archers. Like, you can do it without the market, but the timing advantage you get from going up to castle age is just too much. Like the crossbow spike you get by doing this is very worth it.
Presto. Fabulo.
These 6 villagers can stay over here and make another lumber camp.
Comunio.
Impero? Caedo. Presto.
Ein. Salve.
Quando? Salve. Quando? Quando? Impero? Foglio.
You drop now a second building based on what is happening in the game. Let's say your opponent is making a lot of skirmishes. If he's playing archers, play archers, drop a second range. If he's playing skirmishes, drop a stable, make a couple of scouts, knights, or whatever. If he's making knights, you drop a stable to make camels. If you don't have camels, you drop a second range and play a monastery instead. Or you can play one range monastery with boom, depending on how much damage you've already done. You can just boom instead of trying to finish the game. So second range monastery against someone playing knights.
Impero. Condo.
Presto.
If you don't have access to camels,
Ein. Colo.
against skirmishes, you can play knights. I'm gonna continue making archers the entire time. Refresh the farms. Almost forgot to get horse color and gold mining upgrade while going up. Get the armor for your cavalry as well.
Vero. Porro.
Quando?
I recommend playing open to get better at the game. No, I do not.
Ein. Sane. Comunita.
Get walls up if the situation requires it,
Condo.
Presto. Ein. Porro. Vero. Presto. Ein. Pugno.
and being walled and playing open will depend on what strategy you have opened the game with. Certain strategies require you to play open, certain strategies require you to be walled. It will depend on what your opponent is doing as well. So playing open and walled is subjective based on what is happening in the game. I would never recommend someone to force themselves to play open unless you're specifically practicing for a certain aspect of the game. Let's say you're playing a tournament where the walls are not allowed. Sure, you can skip walls. But if you're planning to win the game and make correct strategy choices, make all the possible moves so that you can win the game, rather than restricting yourself in certain aspects to nerf your gameplay or something to improve. There is no need for weighted training or something, just slowing yourself down. Just play correctly, use the correct strategies, and play a little bit more sharper. If you keep making those moves again and again, you'll get better. I make monastery to make monks instead of the town center, but it just depends on what is happening in the game again, on what the next move should be. Or wheelbarrow,
Caedo.
and now instead of dropping more farms, I can cut that camel and buy stone for
Ein. Presto.
town center. Not the best town center positions, but I'll just make it on the stone instead.
Ago. Sane. Ago. Permita. Comita.
But yeah, this pretty much finishes the Manatom build as well. It really depends on what the follow-up is gonna look like based on your civilization and your opponent's civilization, on how you adapt from this position.
Condo, colo.
Wood upgrade, and
Pugno.
you just macro from this position. Either add a third building, let's say your opponent is playing skirmishes, crossbows like this, you can drop a siege workshop. If you're behind in numbers like this, it doesn't make sense to make ballistics from this position. It's better to just drop the siege workshop.
Presto. Correcto.
Like the monastery and the stable was not required if I know my opponent is going to go for crossbows. So that was not the play in this game, but depending on what I'm scouting from my opponent, I'm gonna make that decision. French Drush. Pretty popular opening nowadays on the high ladder because of how efficient this opening is. Certain aspects it borrows from the other openings. It's one population faster than the Manatoms, and you do almost the same investment as a Premill Drush. It hits at between the same timing, just a little bit before the Manatoms and just a little bit after the Premill Drush. So the timing is very awkward for your opponents to defend this.
Salve, condo.
The opening is gonna look pretty much the same. You're gonna do the 3 onward again. And the requirements are pretty much the same as the Manatom. You want to be able to find and push 2 of your deals, at least 3 if you have the time for it.
Impero. Ain. Impero. Ain. Venatus. Salve. Presto. Sane. Ain. Ain. Venatus. Sane. Salve. Presto. Correcto. Ain. Sane. Correcto. Salve. Impero.
Pero. Salve. Condo. Venato. Salve. Venato. Pero. Presto.
Ain. Venatus.
Presto. Venato.
Salve. Caedo.
Pero. Salve. Pero.
Once you have enough wood for the barracks, that's exactly what I was looking for. The next step, like before that, it's pretty much the same.
Pero. Condo.
I'm gonna be using the barracks to click up as well.
Salve. Presto. Ein. Salve. Correct. Pero. Venato. Ein. Venato.
I'm not pushing the last deer, I almost forgot. You don't have to, again.
Pero. Condo.
Just go scout your opponent instead. If you can push the last layer, go for it, but you don't have to. If you're not comfortable finding your opponent in time, that's only something you can judge for yourself. Most of the time, I'm able to find my opponent, so if you're asking me, I will always push that last layer. But it should never come at the price of not being able to scout your opponent.
Fabu, salve. Presto.
Impero. Presto.
Venatu, venatu.
I'm up.
Presto. Sane.
Again, the same thing. 8 onward.
Salve. Fabu. Presto. Sane.
3 on berries.
Pero.
Condo.
Ein. Salve. Caedo.
Make 2 militias while going up. This is the best part about this, is you're only gonna be doing damage with the initial 2 militias,
Pero.
and it shouldn't really
Salve. Fabu.
change anything. 4th on berry once the mill is completed.
Presto.
Fabulo.
Ein.
Sane.
And you go forward.
Presto. Fabulo.
Once you're getting ready to go up, send 2 villages on gold.
Salve.
Condo.
Sane.
Pero. Condo. 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 Caedo.
Ein. Ago. Sane. Ein.
So this will just decide what you're up against. This point. If you're against range units, you don't need to make the spearman.
Ein. Porro.
But
Pugno.
the spearman is always useful if you're against your opponent's scout.
Ein. Sane. Ein. Ein.
Gonna do 3 on gold,
Ago. Ein.
Ein.
and at that point you should have enough for an archery range. Get the word upgrade almost immediately.
Presto. Salve. Fabu.
Presto.
Impero. Condo.
Ein. Sane. Pugno. Ein. Presto.
And we are in basically the same situation as we were when playing Mana Towns.
Salve.
Ein. Pugno.
Presto.
Pero. Presto. Condo. Ein. Condo.
Pero.
I'm gonna go for the 4 farms again. You can even do 2 farms and get away with it. I still like 4 just because of the timing of it. You can go up to Castle Edge a little bit faster, but since we have not actually invested our food into getting the Manatam upgrade, you can do 2 farms after your sheeps are out, everything on straggler,
Presto.
and make the blacksmith.
Salve. Impero. Ein. Presto.
Presto. Condo. Pero.
New villages can go to gold until you have 5, since you're playing archers.
Sane.
Pero. Salve. Presto.
Again, we're saving for fletching. Get it almost immediately when you can afford it.
Ein. Caedo. Ein. Condo. Presto. Salve.
Impero. Salve. Condo.
Impero. Ago.
If the militias are dead and you're getting villager kills or something for it, it's more than fine.
Impero. Condo.
Ein. Condo. Caedo.
Impero. Ein.
Ein.
After like 6, 7, 8 farms, you can again decide on what the transition is gonna look like. You can play skirmishes. If your opponent is playing range units of his own, you can make skirmishes at this point out of your archery range. But since it's the modern meta, if you can get your walls up,
Presto.
like let's say I fully wall this,
Pero. Condo. Presto. Ein. Sane. Condo. Ein. Condo. Condo.
I'm gonna get my walls up.
Ago.
Salve. Condo. Impero. Podio. Correcto.
Impero. Ein.
Ein. Podio.
Ein. Correctus.
Impero. Sane.
I can cut archer production and just hide behind my walls
Salve.
and use market to click up.
Presto. Ago.
It's pretty much the same thing all the time
Ein.
when it comes down to market use. You just sit behind the walls, use the initial damage and skip feudal age. Especially if you can get yourself walled, it's gonna be fine.
Ein. Correcto.
Presto. Colo.
Salve. Presto. Sane. Caedo. Impero. Podio. 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 Ein. Podio.
Impero.
Presto.
Ein.
Odio.
I can even skip villager production for that faster up.
Presto.
Sane.
Salve.
Correcto. Ein.
Presto.
And now I'm up.
Impero. Correcto.
Continue the archer production, add the stable, add the town center monastery, use your faster uptime to harass your opponent and do enough damage. And that pretty much ends this version of the build as well. And think that should be
Ein. Porro. Impero.
pretty much enough for this variation as well. Get your horse color, your gold mining on the way up to the next stage.
Salve.
Add a second range if you're against crossbows, stable if you're against skirmishers, and monastery if you're against monks.
Presto. Sane. Impero. Pugno. Ein. Pugno. Impero. Ago. Commita.
Presto.
Presto. Sane. Pugno. Ein. Presto. Sane. Impero.
That pretty much finishes the build. Like, you should have enough resources to do
Ein.
Pabulo.
pretty much anything you want to transition into based on what is happening in the game.
Impero. Ein.
Impero. Presane.
So he's playing archers. I'm gonna get crossbow, bosa. So since he's playing crossbow,
Caedo.
Impero. Presto. Ein.
I'm going to invest into ballistics.
Podio.
Impero.
Podio.
Presto.
Ein. Pressane. Ein. Impero. Ein. Impero. Sane. Presto. Ein.
Salve.
Impero. Presto. Sane.
It also depends on what stage you scout your opponent. Like, it's too late to already drop the second archery range, so I'm gonna use the one archery range. And if my timing is fast enough, like the extra range with the crossbows will let me take no damage to his numbers.
Presto. Pugno. Ein.
I'm using my extra range to basically nullify his numbers advantage.
Salve.
Like, I have better technology, he has better numbers. And most of the time technology beats numbers.
Ein. Impero.
Correctus.
Presto. Ein.
Presto.
Ein.
Condo.
Pugno. Ein. Commita. Presto.
Like, even one range crossbow production, if you have the timing for it, should be able to give you an edge
Ein.
Ein.
Condo.
if you use your timing correctly.
Presto. Sane.
Sane.
Farms are running out,
Porro.
but that's fine.
Impero.
Condo.
Condo. Salve.
Presto.
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 Just buy food instead.
Impero. Correctus.
Impero. Ein. Commita.
Ein.
Salve.
Caedo.
Presto. Caedo.
Salve. Sane. Caedo. Impero. Ein. Ein.
Presto. Ein. Sane.
Presto. Colo. Sane. Condo.
Impero. Ein. Pugno. Impero. Presto. Ein.
Secondo.
Dando eretto.
Vero? Ago. Presto.
It is more of a greedy approach what I'm showing, because we are cutting corners in military to get an economy lead. And this will only work if your opponent is falling behind after your initial aggression.
Ein.
You can get away with adding economy a little bit earlier than you should do it if it was an even game.
Presto. Sane. Secondo.
So let's say he's up to castle age now. I'm gonna kickstart my production elsewhere. I can even drop a forward siege workshop
Vero? Sane.
if I wanna apply pressure. But this is like a somewhat of a follow-up to what you can do when you reach castle age this quickly. Most of these are dependent on you reaching castle age faster and applying pressure. The most vulnerable part of the build is when you drop the market and sell resources to go up. That's when you're the most vulnerable, and you should wait to drop the market and until you're very sure that you're not gonna take any damage from the position you drop the market. In most games that is possible to do, but it's not as apparent. The spears come forward. It's something I really like to do, and I'm gonna do it with which stuff has no bonuses for it. I might try to remind myself. Let's do it with Saracens. I'm not gonna try to use the market. Most of it is just usually the early part of the build anyway.
نعم باحث عن الطعام.
The build order in the opening is very similar to the scout opening. We're gonna go up to feudal at 19 pop if you don't have any eco bonuses. If you have any eco bonuses which support this, go up with 18 population instead. Any food bonuses, it can be Franks, Lithuanians, Persians, Byzantine, like almost 90% have some eco bonuses, but most important is to look for a food eco bonus. So let's say Aztec has some sort of food eco bonus because you can collect faster, so you can do it with that. Bengalis, because you get extra 2 villages, you can get away with that. Britons, 18 pop is fine. Bulgarians probably 19, Burgundians probably 19. Burmese, you save the upgrade on wood, so you can go with 18 as well. Byzantine, 18 as well. Celts, 18 as well. So it's just very dependent on what good eco bonuses you get in Dark Age on whether you're gonna go for 18 or 19 population. I would always go for 18 population just because you can maybe get lucky and kill a villager or kill your opponent's scout. But if you don't have any eco bonuses, my recommendation is just to stick with 19 population. Your economy cannot support you skipping that last villager if you do it without eco bonus. Since we're going to be moving out with villages which are supposed to be working on the map. In this one, it is kind of a requirement to push all the deers though. Even if your scouting is terrible, try to get all the deers in. It actually is a requirement in this one, since we need all the food we can get.
أمر صياد مستعد.
نعم. نعم. أمر مستعدة. نعم. بناءة. مستعدة.
صياد.
نعم سأفعل.
أهلا. ألو.
I think it's in the word, but I explained like the first archer opening I did. If you were there, I did explain the timings of it. I didn't do it, but I explained the timing. Since I was playing Byzantines for the archer demonstrations. I didn't do the skirmisher transition, but you can listen to it in the word
مستعدة.
on what I explained when playing archers in a skirmisher transition.
صياد.
أمر.
صحيح.
نعم أمر. نعم
نعم صياد. أهلا.
صيادة.
Everything goes to hunt. Until you're ready to click up.
نعم
أمر. صياد. مستعد.
صيادة.
Once you have the food, 2 goes to berries.
صحيح.
And you basically want 8 on one wood line. And as soon as you find your opponent, you send 3 villagers forward. I was always discussing between going with 4 villagers forward or 3 villagers forward, and
نعم
it like my conclusion was if your villagers have any bonuses like Spanish or Poles, Berbers, you can send 4, but most of the time I think 3 is more than enough.
أهلا. ألو. بناء طابق.
أمر.
Once you're kind of close to your opponent's base, drop the barracks. The barracks should be like 75% towards your enemy's base. You don't want to make it on top of your opponent, and you don't want to make it in the middle of the map. You want to make it like slightly closer towards his side of the map. And the reasoning for this is to send spearmen back to your base. If you make it in the middle of the map, the spearmen that you are sending are going to be way too late helping the front. But if you make it too forward, your spearmen, which you need to send to the back of your base, are gonna take too much time to reach at the back of your base. So making it at around 75% towards your opponent is pretty convenient for some spear protection in your base.
نعم صحيح. مستعدة. أمر. مستعدة. أمر.
باحث عن الطعام.
نعم سأفعل. أمر. حسنا. نعم نعم مستعدة. بناءة.
Once you're up, get the wood upgrade and start making spearmen.
أمر. بناءة. حطابة. نعم
Drop a
حطابة.
house.
مستعدة. حطابة.
مستعد.
So this opening is very bad against any militia openings. So you ideally want to do it against someone playing archers or someone playing scouts. If your opponent is playing French Drush or Man at Arms, this is actually a very bad, well, not a bad build, but it's much harder to defend yourself while attacking your opponent. So any of the 2 passive openings your opponent is doing, which is going to be scouts or straight archers, this is pretty good against that.
نعم صحيح.
And once your archery range is up, you probably want to make your tower with these villages behind one of the resources of your opponent.
مستعدة. نعم أمر. بناءة. نعم
Either a wood line or a berry, either is fine. Whichever is like more close towards your villages, go for that one. And continue making spearmen and skirmishers.
مستعدة.
عن الطعام.
And I would recommend going for at least 3 skirmishers before you stop. You almost never want to make more than 3 skirmishers until your opponent starts making his own skirmishers. So wait for 3 skirms and that's it. Like you basically stop the skirmisher production.
صحيح.
نعم سأفعل.
And for spearmen, you just need 2. So this is your small army that you play with until you know what your opponent is doing.
أمر
Your opponent might open scouts into skirmishes to beat this. He might have opened straight range. Once he sees you attacking this, he'll make like 1 or 2 arches and then make skirmishes only. He'll remove villages from gold. In that scenario, there's 2 ways of defending this. So he's either gonna fight this with his units and try to bait time, or he's gonna counterattack. So the 2 things you want to protect is your berry and your wood line. If you're against scouts, you can wall in your lumber camp, since we're playing only 1 lumber camp, and send 1 spearman back to protect your berries. Ideally, you can also wall your berries and not be worried about it, but having 1 spearman in the base is just gonna guarantee that no stupid villages will die a stupid death. So having 1 spearman in the back, after having your 2 initial spearmen, 3 skirmishes, everything you're gonna be making is just gonna be going in the back of your base. If it's gonna be archers from your opponent, you're gonna be using your scout to track the movement of your opponent. Let's say your opponent is Britons. In this case, I got lucky since I played against a random AI, but let's say he's Britons. You denied a little bit, you didn't kill a single villager, you're still actually fine. You're more than fine. This army is going to be very distracting for your opponent. He's not going to be able to deal with it until he has enough skirmishes of his own. So the next transition is going to be scouts, but to get to that, you have to make sure you don't take damage. For that, we can get some walls up. Like if I wall this area and this area, he's gonna take the long way to do damage, which will buy me a lot of time. So this is already something I'm looking at. But let's say your map is really open. Your map is really open. It's better to send the skirmishes back if you're against archers. So, fuck house. My bad.
أمر استعدت
Once your sheeps are out,
نعم
send 3 villages from the sheep to the berries.
أمر صحيح بناءة نعم مستعدة
And these villages will make a couple of houses, and I think they should be used as basically
نعم
fighters as well. Think of them as 3 mana towns if you want to do it like that. Otherwise, you just want to send villages on stone
نعم صحيح مستعدة ثابت أمر
and start making towers again.
نعم حسنا أمر صحيح
Meanwhile, these villages can be used as a fighting force.
نعم نعم
I keep sending this skirmisher back because I have it controlled group.
مستعدة أمر بناءة
And now I want 5 farms before I stop making farms
نعم حسنا
for my transition.
أمر
I'm basically just using these villages as fighting force till then, till I have enough stone. I'm not gonna go research. I'm not gonna get blacksmith because usually the fletching in these small numbers is really a non-issue.
بناءة
I'm gonna be waiting for enough wood to get the stable up.
بناءة نعم أمر بناءة مستعدة
And now I have enough.
أمر
Is that a lumber camp?
مستعدة
Again, continue making skirmishes in the front to reinforce this army if you lose too much.
بناءة
And now you can start making scouts as soon as your stable is up, and we can continue making. We can continue making
نعم
scouts and stuff.
مستعدة بناءة أمر حطابة
3 mana towns that do almost no damage. Yes.
مستعد بناء الو
نعم
مستعد
بناءة مستعدة أمر نعم حسنا أمر سأفعل
Just protect your villages and drop towers to deny resources. Add skirmishes if you need. At this point, you can think about adding a blacksmith. Most of the time, I just skip it and make farms instead.
أمر مستعدة
مستعد. أهلا.
And when you run out of berries, that is like a really good time. If you have 6 on berries from the start of the game, this is like a really good time to get to gold. I used to always struggle on when to transition to gold, but the way I figured it out was if you keep these 8 on wood and do not touch them, and you keep 6 on berries and do not remove them from there,
أمر.
once you run out of berries, just send the villagers from berries to gold.
مستعدة نعم سأفعل
Keep making scouts and skirmishes to buy time, make towers to deny whatever resources you can. And around like 10 to 12 farms, I would say 12 farms, you can send like 2 more villagers to Woodline.
هجوم. نعم. الهجوم.
نعم سأفعل
And of course, drop our trusty market.
نعم سأفعل مستعدة نعم مستعدة سأفعل أمر صحيح
نعم. هجوم.
The AI is killing me.
نعم. القتال.
أمر
الهجوم. مستعد.
نعم
نعم. هجوم. أمر حسن. الهجوم.
مستعدة
Again, just idling because
صحيح
why not?
مستعد. سأفعل.
I can go up if I idle.
نعم. سأفعل. مستعد. نعم.
مستعدة أمر
And I'm up to the next stage.
أمر حسن.
مستعدة
مستعد حسن. الهجوم. نعم.
I can add a second stable.
نعم
أمر. الهجوم.
سأفعل
نعم.
أمر
Come on. Fucking farting.
نعم. حسن. مستعد.
And that's pretty much the forward build.
نعم. 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 أمر. نعم. عامل منزل.
عاملة منجم نعم
Forgot blacksmith.
أمر. مستعد. نعم. الهجوم. قتال.
مستعدة
مستعد. مزارع.
نعم مستعدة بناء حطابة أمر نعم أمر مستعدة حطابة
Even if I'm getting like decent prices, Saracen, it like really doesn't change anything. The build pretty much remains the same. You drop the stable after 5 farms. Get the stone if you want to continue making towers with your initial villagers. After dropping the initial tower, you can even send the villagers back if you have done enough damage with their initial villagers and spearsmen and skirmishers. Most of it is just about buying time. And if you do enough damage with your initial opening, you'll be up to castle age almost always faster than your opponent. Can drop our town center immediately.
نعم مستعدة بناء
Forward villager can also drop monastery, siege workshop. Like the transition can be whatever from this position, and that pretty much ends the build order as well.